everyone, Brielle here, and welcome to Loot and Lantern. Today we're talking about the Frozen Divide Nix, which officially launches on June 25th and is shaping up to be the biggest expansion Throne and Liberty has received since launch. On June 17th, the developers released a massive deep dive covering everything coming with the expansion, and after watching through it all, I wanted to break down the biggest features, talk about what excites me the most, and share a few concerns I still have heading into launch. As someone who has played Throne and Liberty since day one, and is currently sitting at around 8,000 gear score, I've stuck with the game through both the highs and the lows. So today, let's dive into everything we know about Nix so far, along with my thoughts on the biggest features coming with the expansion. Let's start with the biggest addition, the new region of Nix. Located northeast of Talandre, Nix is a frozen wasteland described by the developers as an extreme environment filled with relentless blizzards. Because of these harsh conditions, neither the Archaeum Legion nor the Resistance has been able to establish control over the region. The zone features two major strongholds, Aetherion and Frontier Hold. Aetherion is especially interesting because it's essentially a giant aerial vessel created by Da Vinci that hovers above Nix. Frontier Hold, meanwhile, is located underground and introduces frozen scrolls which provide offensive, defensive, and support effects. Outside of those strongholds, players will be able to explore 5 new hunting grounds: Frozen Nightlands, Scars of Sacrifice, Entropic, Tundra, Tumgir, Hollow, and Stillreach. Each area appears to have its own enemies, challenges, and environmental design. Personally, I think Nix looks fantastic. It's easily one of the most visually distinct regions we've seen so far, and feels very different from Lazlan, Stoneguard, and Talandre. Alongside the new region, players will also gain access to Adventure Codex Part 3, Driftmore. This storyline consists of 6 acts and continues the story after the events of Talandre. We'll learn more about why Clay and Iska departed for Nix after answering Janice's call at the end of the previous story arc. For players invested in Throne and Liberty's lore, this should be a nice continuation of the narrative. We're also finally getting a level cap increase to 60, skill specialization points are increasing from 100 to 110, mastery points are increasing from 200 to 220. Speaking of progression, the developers are also introducing a new character boost option alongside Nix. This feature isn't free. Players will need to purchase a character boost through the in-game shop or their platform's storefront on Steam, PlayStation, or Xbox before creating a new character. The boost is clearly aimed at returning players, brand new players, or even veterans who want to try a completely different weapon combination without starting from scratch. When creating a new character, players can choose to apply the boost and jump directly into the game with a character built for current content. Boosted characters start at level 55 with roughly 7,200 combat power, and arrive with a full set of gear, weapons, accessories, runes, and skill setups already configured based on the weapon combination you choose. The boost also skips a large portion of the early progression process. Story content is completed up through the final chapter before Nix. Major regions and waypoints are unlocked, weapon mastery is already leveled, and numerous account systems have been advanced to help players jump directly into current content. Life skills are also prepared ahead of time, and players receive a variety of currencies, tokens, materials, and other resources to help continue their progression. Personally, I think this is a smart addition. One of the biggest challenges for any MMO expansion is getting new and returning players caught up quickly enough to experience new content alongside everyone else. Starting around 7,200 combat power means players can jump into Nix immediately, rather than spending weeks trying to catch up first. Of course, players who enjoy leveling and progressing naturally can still do that, but having another option available should make the expansion more accessible for a wider range of players. Now let's talk about the new weapon, Gauntlets. I'll be honest, this isn't exactly the feature I'm most excited about. That said, I know a lot of players have been looking forward to another weapon being added to the game. Gauntlets become the third weapon added since launch, following Spear and Orb. The weapon focuses heavily on close-range combat and aggressive gameplay. Its signature mechanic is Eclipse of Blood, which shifts the weapon into a more offensive state and increases mobility. According to the developers, Gauntlets are all about chaining abilities together and maintaining a smooth combat flow. Personally, while this isn't at the top of my list, I can definitely see the appeal for players who enjoy fast-paced melee combat. Now let's talk about what is probably the biggest change coming with Nix, and the feature I'm most interested in seeing once the expansion launches. The developers describe the item system overhaul as the change that will have the biggest impact on gameplay. One of the biggest changes is the removal of the gear tier system. As the game has grown, it's become increasingly difficult for newer players to catch up to those of us who have been playing since launch. The developers seem to be trying to address that problem directly. Instead of focusing so heavily on tiers, enchantments, transfers, and multiple upgrade systems, equipment will now have an item level that more clearly shows how powerful a piece of gear is. From what we've seen, the goal is to reduce a lot of the stress and complexity that currently comes with gearing. New equipment should become useful much faster, instead of requiring a long chain of upgrades before it's worth using. The trait system is also getting a major overhaul. Currently, obtaining the exact traits you want can be frustrating and often requires sacrificing other pieces of gear. With Nix, players will be able to directly choose and unlock traits using materials. This should make build customization much more straightforward and reduce a lot of the frustration that can come with chasing specific traits. The developers have also stated that current player investments won't be lost. Existing progression will be converted into the new system. They're also introducing a new inheritance system designed to make moving between pieces of gear much easier. Overall, this looks like a huge improvement. Whether it works in practice remains to be seen, but it feels like a positive direction, especially for newer and more casual players. Another new progression system coming with Nix is armor and accessory skill cores. Unlike the current system, these can be engraved into heroic armor and accessories in addition to weapons. Some of these effects sound extremely powerful and can even alter how existing weapon skills function. Depending on how impactful they end up being, they could open up a lot of new build possibilities. For PvP players, we're also getting Remnants of Nix. The developers have described Remnants of Nix as the true battlefield for the strongest. It's a new inter-server PvP zone that shares some similarities with Nebula, but comes with its own progression systems and unique rules. Instead of focusing on large guild battles, Remnants of Nix is designed for much smaller groups of 1 to 4 players. The mode also operates on a session-based system. Players can freely enter at the start of a session, but once a certain amount of time has passed, no additional players can join. One interesting mechanic is that monsters do not respawn. Once they're defeated and looted, they're gone for the remainder of the session. That means players will be competing over a limited number of resources and rewards. During a run, players can make use of frozen scrolls, hide in bushes to avoid detection, and even use the auroral path to move around the map. After 5 minutes, players can begin attempting to escape with the rewards through designated escape ports. But there's a catch. If you die before escaping or leave without securing your loot, you'll lose everything you've collected during that session. One of the biggest rewards available here is Red Frost equipment. These items drop in an unappraised state and must be purified before they can be used. Because they can be lost if you're killed before escaping, they seem to be some of the most valuable and high-risk rewards coming with Nix. While PvP isn't usually my thing, I can definitely see the appeal for players who enjoy high-risk, high-reward gameplay. Moving away from progression systems for a moment, let's talk about some of the actual content we'll be running once Nix arrives. The expansion includes 2 new co-op dungeons, Stonegrave Cradle and Frostbreath Cave. Stonegrave Cradle was inspired by a giant mechanical cat named Nix. The developers even mentioned that many of its animations and behaviors were inspired by real cats. Meanwhile, Frostbreath Cave embraces the frozen theme of Nix and is filled with icy landscapes and creatures adapted to survive the harsh environment. Each dungeon comes with its own boss encounter. Stonegrave Cradle features Nix, Frostbreath Cave features Volcanus. From what we've seen so far, both encounters look visually distinct and should provide very different experiences. Of course, Nix isn't just about dungeons and gear. The developers are also making some significant changes to the open world. One addition I'm particularly excited about is field events. These replace Dominion events within Nix, and unlike the current system, won't follow a fixed schedule. Instead, players can participate whenever they choose. There will be 25 different field events spread throughout Nix, each with its own story and progression. Completing these events can reward players with Red Frost items, giving players another way to earn some of the expansion's most valuable rewards. As someone with a full-time job, I think this sounds like a huge improvement. One of the biggest frustrations with scheduled content is feeling forced to log in at specific times, so giving players more freedom is something I'm very happy to see. The developers are also reworking field elite enemies. Elite monsters will now appear in both PvE and PvP versions. Existing elites from Laslan, Stoneguard, and Talandre are being updated, while Nix introduces 5 entirely new elite enemies for players to hunt down. According to the developers, PvP elites will appear very rarely and will always be level 60, while PvE elites will spawn more regularly and scale to the region they're located in. It'll be interesting to see how these changes impact both open world progression and competition between players. Here's another feature I'm a bit unsure about. Nix will not feature the traditional party-based abyssal dungeons we've seen in previous regions. Instead, players will enter solo dungeons by consuming specific items. These dungeons are intended to provide progression-focused content that players can tackle whenever they want, which is something I can definitely appreciate as someone who often plays MMOs solo. That said, many players, myself included, enjoyed running abyssal dungeons with guildmates. Some of my favorite memories in Throne and Liberty came from spending hours farming those dungeons together. Because of that, I'm very curious to see how the community reacts to this change and whether the benefits of solo accessibility outweigh the loss of that group experience. One area where I have mixed feelings, though, is how we'll actually be getting around the region. Nix introduces 2 new traversal systems, the Aether Suit and the Auroral Path. The Aether Suit allows players to descend from Aetheron to the surface below. Meanwhile, the Auroral Path serves as a transportation network connecting different parts of Nix. From what the developers showed, traditional teleport points appear to be limited. I'll admit I'm a little skeptical about that decision. The system looks fantastic visually, but I do wonder if players will eventually ask for additional fast travel options. Still, I'm trying to keep an open mind until we get our hands on the expansion. And finally, let's talk about some of the biggest encounters coming with the expansion. Nix introduces 2 new field bosses, and I apologize, I'm definitely going to mess up most of these names. You first have Porphos and White Shoulder Thuban. We're also getting a brand new arc boss named Ramux. Ramux fights alongside her dragon-like mount Atarat, creating a multi-stage encounter. The developers also revealed Vegamore. Standing roughly 200 meters tall, Vegamore is less of a traditional boss and more of a moving battlefield. Players will need to destroy different parts of its body while navigating the massive creature itself. From everything shown so far, Vegamore looks like one of the most ambitious encounters Throne and Liberty has ever attempted. Before we wrap things up, the developers also shared a roadmap covering June through September. While they didn't dive into every detail during the showcase, it's nice to see that Nix isn't being treated as a standalone update. The roadmap gives us a glimpse at what the team plans to focus on in the months following the expansion's launch, and shows that additional content is already being planned. I always like seeing roadmaps because they help give players an idea of what's coming next and provide some reassurance that support for the game isn't slowing down after a major release. Of course, plans can always change, but it's encouraging to see the developers laying out a rough direction for the next few months. Overall, the Frozen Divide Nix looks incredibly ambitious. Not every change is one I'm completely sold on. I'm still a little skeptical about the lack of traditional fast travel, and I'm very curious to see how players react to the changes being made to abyssal dungeons. I also have some concerns about the gear overhaul. Overall, I like the direction they're taking. Making progression easier to understand and reducing some of the frustration around gearing sounds like a good thing, but it's such a massive change that I don't think we'll really know how successful it is until players get their hands on it and spend some time with the new system. Even with some reservations, I'm still looking forward to jumping into Nix. Between the new story content, the new region, field events, Remnants of Nix, new dungeons, new bosses, and the level 60 progression update, there's a lot coming with the expansion and plenty for players to explore on day one. As someone who has continued playing Throne and Liberty since launch, I genuinely want this game to succeed. While we'll have to wait until June 25th to see how everything comes together, I'm cautiously optimistic about Nix overall. But now I'd love to hear from you. What feature are you most excited about in Nix? Are you planning to jump into the expansion on day one, or are you waiting to see how things play out? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Throne and Liberty content here on Loot and Lantern. And if you prefer written content, I've also covered Nix in blog form over on Loot and Lantern, so feel free to check that out as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.